The part of me that knew better was already gone by the time he ordered the second hot dog. Not gone like I forgot myself. Gone like I stopped pretending I hadn't noticed him. I know how men look at a woman working alone. I cataloged every version of that look years ago, filed it somewhere cold and useful. His wasn't in the catalog. He stood at my window in a white suit in the middle of a construction site in a 104-degree Phoenix afternoon, and he watched me work the way you watch something you are trying to memorize before it disappears. I have been many things to many people. A mistake. A cautionary tale. A mother.
A debt.
No one had ever looked at me like I was something worth the effort of remembering. If you have ever been looked at like that, really looked at after everything you survived, and felt afraid of it instead of grateful, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Stay with me. Subscribe if you want to find your way back to these stories. I'll be here. The lunch rush at the Eldritch site ran like a machine. 12:30 on the nose. Every day, 40 men in hard hats and high-vis vests peeling away from the steel skeleton rising off Camelback Road, crossing the caliche lot in ones and twos, forming a line that curved past the front fender of my truck. I had learned their orders by the second week. Ortega, 2 dogs, no onion, extra mustard. Briggs, the chili cheese, always asked if it was beef chili, always looked relieved when I said yes. The young one, couldn't be more than 19, who ordered the same thing every day and called me ma'am like I was his grandmother. I kept moving. That was the whole job, really. Keep moving, keep the grill clear, keep the line down. The moment you stopped, everything backed up and the rhythm was gone, and you were fighting the clock for the rest of the shift. So when the line went quiet, not slow, not thinning, but quiet, the way a room goes quiet when something walks and that rearranges the air, I felt it before I saw it. I was wrapping Ortega's second dog when I looked up. The man at the back of the line wore white. Not cream, not off-white, white, the kind that had no business existing within a quarter-mile of the site. His suit was cut close, no tie, collar open at the throat. Silver hair swept back from a face that had no obvious age to it, the kind of face that had simply arrived at its final form and stopped. The workers around him had shifted without meaning to, the way iron filings move near a magnet, not fleeing, just orienting. He was not looking at the menu board. He was watching me work. I turned back to the grill, flipped 2 dogs, rotated the buns to the warm side, ladled chili without measuring it because I had done it enough times that my hand already knew. I took Briggs's order. I took 4 more. I did not look at the back of the line again. The man in white stepped to the window. Up close, his eyes were the color of a desert sky an hour before dark, that particular shade of gray-blue that isn't quite either. He looked at the handwritten menu board tacked above my window. He read it without hurrying. "What's the most popular?" he said. His voice was low. Not quiet, low, the kind of register that carries without effort, like it had learned a long time ago it didn't need to compete with anything. "Southwest Verde," I said. "Green chili, pepper jack, caramelized onion. Beef frank, not the cheap kind." "I'll take that." I built it without looking at him. Bun down, frank out of the water. Green chili ladled from the pan I kept at the back of the grill where it stayed at the right temperature. Pepper jack, the onions, folded in foil. I set it on the counter and said $12. He laid a 20 flat on the stainless steel. "Keep it. I don't need the tip." "It isn't a tip," he said. "It's the difference between 12 and 20. I looked at him then. He wasn't smiling, not exactly. There was something in his expression that was adjacent to amusement but quieter, like a man who had stopped performing reactions and only registered the real ones. I opened the till, counted back $8, and set them on the counter beside his hand. $12, I said again. He picked up the $8. He picked up his hot dog. He stepped back from the window. He did not go back to his car. He leaned against the side panel of my truck, 3 feet from my order window, unwrapped the foil, and ate. Slowly, like a man who had nowhere else to be and had decided, without announcement, that here was where he would be. The line behind him kept moving. I kept moving. I did not look at him again for 11 minutes because I was counting. On the 12th minute, he stepped back to the window. "One more," he said. I built the second one without asking if he wanted it the same way. He watched my hands. Not my face, my hands moving through the sequence I had done 1,000 times. I wrapped it, set it down, said $12. He gave me a 20. I gave him 8 back. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something that had been a smile once, in a different century, and still remembered the shape. He ate the second hot dog. He folded both pieces of foil into a precise rectangle and dropped them in the bin I kept chained to the front fender. He walked back across the lot. The workers around him shifted again, without meaning to. A black SUV was waiting at the far edge of the site.
He got in.
It pulled away without hurry. I stood at my grill for a moment with no one at the window. The caliche was still white bright in the afternoon sun. The steel frame of the building threw a single bar of shade across the lot that hadn't moved in an hour. The smell of green chili and grilled onions sat in the air inside the truck, familiar as my own hands. I had run this truck through 11 different locations in 3 years. I knew how to clock a site in 2 days, who tipped, who lingered, who to watch, who was harmless. I had learned to read the weight of a situation before it announced itself. I reached for the tongs and started resetting the grill for the afternoon. I was already thinking about tomorrow at 12:30. I wiped that thought down like a spill and kept working. Thursdays were harder than other days. I don't have a clean reason for that. The math of the week is the same on Thursday as any other. Same prep time, same supply run, same drive across Phoenix in the gray before sunrise with Nora buckled into the passenger seat still in her pajamas, her head tipped against the window, asleep with the particular total commitment that children have to sleep, like the world can wait. The Thursday problem wasn't logistical. It was the way the week's weight had fully landed by then, and there was still Friday between me and the weekend, and weekends meant the site was closed, and I had to find another location and start over with a crowd that didn't know me yet. Thursdays, I was tired in the bones. This Thursday, Nora's after-school pickup had fallen through. Britta, who watched her on the late days, had a family thing, texted me at 11:15 with 4 words and a sorry face. I had 40 minutes to drive back across the city, get Nora, drive back, and still open on time. I did it. I am not listing this as an accomplishment, it is simply what the day required, so I did it. That is the whole of being the only person responsible for another human life. The day tells you what it needs, and you find a way to be that. Nora was good on the truck. She had always been good on the truck. She sat on the cooler lid at the back with her drawing book and her 4 markers that still worked, and she did not complain about the heat or the smell or the noise, because she had grown up inside it, and it was her normal. My kid, 6 years old, and already building a normal out of whatever she had. The lunch rush came and went. She stayed on her cooler, drawing something that might have been a horse or a cactus. The distinction mattered deeply to her and not at all to the finished product. I kept moving. Orders, change, reset, orders. The rhythm. 12:30 came and went. 12:40. I was rotating the last 4 dogs when I heard the line go that particular kind of quiet. I did not look up immediately. I finished the rotation. When I looked up, he was 3rd in line. White shirt today, no jacket, concession to the heat, maybe, or as close to one as he was apparently capable of. The shirt was still pressed. His hair was still immaculate. He looked like a man who had decided once, a long time ago, what he was going to look like, and the Arizona sun had simply agreed to cooperate. The 2 workers ahead of him got their orders. Stepped away. He came to the window. Before he could speak, a small voice behind me said, "Who's that?" I turned. Nora had come off the cooler and was standing at my shoulder, drawing book in one hand, blue marker uncapped in the other. She was looking at the man in the white shirt with the frank, assessing stare that 6-year-olds deploy without mercy. I watched him register her. He did not smile the automatic way adults smile at children, that performance of warmth that is really just a social reflex. He looked at her the same way he looked at everything. With attention. Real, unhurried attention. He crouched. Right there in the caliche dust, white shirt and all, he dropped to her eye level and said, "I come here for lunch. Your mom makes the best hot dog I've had." Nora considered this. "She won't let me have the green chili ones," she said. "Too spicy. She says I'll decide I like it, and then she'll have to start keeping it at home, and the smell doesn't come out of the fridge." Something in his expression, not a smile, but the room a smile lives in, moved. "What's your favorite topping?" he asked. Nora did not hesitate. "The little green things." "Relish." "The little green things," she repeated, with the specific patience of a child correcting someone who is technically right but has missed the point entirely. He looked at me over her head. I turned back to the grill. "Southwest Verde," I said. "Same as yesterday. Add the relish." I built it without answering. When I set it on the counter, he was standing again, and Nora had gone back to her cooler and her probable horse cactus. He handed me a 20. I counted back $8 without being asked. He took them, and he took his hot dog, and he did not lean against the side of my truck this time. He looked at Nora once more. She was already drawing, completely restored to her own world. And then he walked back across the lot. I told myself I did not watch him go. I watched him go. That night, after Nora was asleep, I sat outside the motel room on the concrete step with my back against the wall. The air was still warm at 9 o'clock. Phoenix summer stores the heat in every flat surface and releases it slowly after dark, like the city is deciding whether to let the day end or hold on to it a little longer. The parking lot lights buzzed. A truck passed on the road. Somewhere 2 rooms down, a television. I gave myself 10 minutes. This is a practice I had developed over the years, cordoning off a feeling, giving it a contained space, not letting it bleed into everything else. 10 minutes. Feel what you're going to feel, and then fold it up and put it away, because there are things tomorrow that require your full attention, and you cannot afford to walk around cracked open. I sat with it, the way he had crouched, without thinking about the knees of his trousers, without performing anything. The way Nora had not shied away, and she shied away from plenty. She had her own system for reading people, 6 years old and already building it. The way she had just answered him, steady and certain like he was safe, and she already knew. My daughter did not get to decide who was safe. That was my job. That was the only job that mattered. The 10 minutes ended. I pressed my back flat against the warm concrete, and I said it to myself clearly, without softening it. You do not get to want this. Not a question. Not a plea. A rule, like the green chili rule, like every other rule I had made for the shape of our life. Because the thing about building something careful and deliberate, and yours, built from a bank loan and refusal and 6 years of not stopping, is that you learn exactly how much weight the structure can hold. And you learn to stop adding to it before it breaks. I got up, went inside, checked the lock, then checked it again. The rule held for 4 days. I kept it the way I kept all my rules, not by not feeling the thing, but by staying busy enough that the feeling had nowhere to land. Supply runs. Nora's school pickup. The Tuesday afternoon when the generator made a sound it had never made before, and I spent 90 minutes on the side of a road in Tempe learning that it was a loose coupling and not the beginning of the end, which is what I had been quietly catastrophizing since the first noise. There is always something that needs doing. That is the mercy of running a business alone. The list never empties, and an empty list is where the dangerous thinking happens. Wednesday came and went. He ordered the same thing. I gave him his $8. He ate at the window. Thursday, he didn't come. I noticed at 12:50. Not because I had been watching for him. I am clear-eyed enough about myself to know I had been watching for him, but because his absence had a shape to it. The line was the same length. The orders were the same. The day was the same. Something was missing from the geometry of it, and I registered that absence the way you register a sound that has been going long enough that you only notice it when it stops. I did not give that 10 minutes. I gave it nothing. I closed up at 2, drove back to the motel, made Nora a grilled cheese, helped her with her letters, put her to bed. I checked the lock twice. The dust storm came in on Friday, like it owned the place. Phoenix hubbubs don't announce themselves politely. 1 hour the sky is white-blue and ferocious. The next a brown wall is sitting on the horizon and moving toward you with the quiet purpose of something that has done this before and knows you cannot stop it. The foreman called the all-clear at 1:15. The site emptied in under 10 minutes, hard hats and high-vis vests dispersing to trucks and trailers and covered structures, the whole organized noise of the site swallowed into shelter. I had been in the middle of a lunch order for Ortega when the radio crackled. He waved me off, took his hot dog anyway, jogged toward the crew trailer. The lot went still. I started closing down. There is a procedure for the storm. Drop the awning, latch the serving window, kill the grill, cover the toppings. I had done it in Glendale, in Tempe, in 2 other sites before this one. My hands knew the sequence. I moved through it, the wind already picking up, grit tapping against the aluminum side of the truck like something impatient. I had the first awning pole unhooked and was reaching for the bracket on the second when I heard footsteps on the caliche behind me. I did not turn around. I knew the weight of that particular quiet. He took the pole, just stepped up beside me and wrapped one hand around the bracket support, steady, without asking, without announcing himself, like a man who had calculated that asking would be declined and had decided to make the question irrelevant. "I've got it," I said. He held the pole. I stood there for a moment with my hands still on my side of the bracket. The wind was moving now, real and directional, carrying the smell of hot dust and something older underneath it, the particular desert smell that lives beneath everything else in Phoenix, older than the concrete, older than the roads. It pressed against the left side of my face. He was not going to move. I took my side of the awning. We folded it together, without speaking. He handled the poles like he had handled things with his hands before, not like a man who usually delegates, but like a man who had learned to delegate and still remembered what it felt like to do things himself. There is a difference. I have worked alongside enough people to know it. The folded canvas went into its sleeve. I latched the window. He held the second pole in place while I ran the strap through, and the only sounds were the wind and the distant groan of the site structure settling, and the snap of the strap buckle. Then nothing. The work was done, and neither of us moved. That was the stillness. Not comfortable, not uncomfortable. The kind of stillness that has weight to it, that means something is about to be said or decided, and the air is simply waiting to see which it is. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Long enough to know how," I said. A pause. That's not what I asked. I looked at him. He was watching me with that same attention, not waiting to speak, not composing a follow-up, just waiting. He was very good at waiting. It occurred to me, standing there in the brown-tinged light with the storm front moving in overhead, that a man who is very good at waiting has either learned patience or was born with enough time that patience stopped being a virtue and became simply a condition. 6 years, I said. He nodded once. Not the nod of someone receiving information. The nod of someone whose suspicion has been confirmed, someone who came in already holding a number and has just been told they were right. There was something in it that I did not know what to do with, so I filed it next to the other things I was not knowing what to do with and turned back to the truck. "You can go inside," I said. "Storm's coming." "I know." He did not move toward shelter. He stood at the back corner of my truck with his hands in his trouser pockets and his white shirt already picking up a fine coat of dust along the shoulder, and he watched the wall of brown moving in across the valley the way you watch something you have watched 100 times before and still find worth watching. I finished securing the truck, climbed into the cab, sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel before starting the engine. Through the passenger window, I could see him, still standing, unhurried, the storm arriving around him like it was not entirely his concern. I pulled out. The drive back took 40 minutes in the reduced visibility, the whole city softened and strange under the brown light, familiar streets turned foreign. Nora was at Britta's. I had 2 hours before pickup. I drove and kept my eyes on the taillights ahead of me and did not think about anything in particular. At a red light on McDowell, I noticed the awning pole was in the truck bed, the one he had held. Still there because I had not unloaded at the site. I had just driven. I could feel the specific temperature of it through the back window somehow, the way you feel a presence in a room without looking. Warm from his hand and then from the desert heat and then from whatever the difference between those two things was, which I was not going to examine. The light changed. I drove. Phoenix has its old places. You can feel them if you stand still long enough, the weight of things that chose to stay when everything else blew through. I had always moved before anything could ask me to stay. I was beginning to understand that the city does not ask. It waits. The thing about a routine that has started to feel like home is that you stop checking it for cracks. That is the danger of comfort. Not that it makes you weak. I do not think comfort makes anyone weak. The danger is that it makes you stop looking for the thing that will take it away. You start assuming the ground is solid because it has been solid 3 weeks running, and you forget that you are in Phoenix, and in Phoenix the ground moves. I had stopped checking. The days had settled into a shape I recognized. 6:15 wake. The drive with Nora still half asleep against the window. The prep, the rush, the rhythm of the grill. Travis at 12:30. Always 12:30 now. Always alone. Always the Southwest Fair Day with relish. The $8 back. The way he ate without hurrying. The way the workers gave him space without being told to. I had stopped watching the clock at 12:15. I had stopped telling myself I was watching it. That is how I knew the rule was already losing. The Monday before it happened was ordinary in every way that mattered. Travis came, ordered, paid, took his $8. We talked, not the careful circling of the first weeks, but something easier. He asked how the generator had held up. I told him about the coupling. He listened the way he listened to everything, like the information was worth the attention I was giving it. When he left, I was already thinking about the next order. Tuesday the same. Wednesday the same. Thursday, Garrett Pell came by mid-afternoon. Garrett was the site manager, mid-50s, broad through the shoulders, the kind of man who had been outdoors so long his face had the texture of the caliche lot. He was decent. He tipped well, asked after Nora by name, kept the newer workers from lingering at the window too long when the line backed up. I liked him the way you like people who do their job without requiring anything extra from you. He came around 2, after the rush, with a clipboard under his arm and a coffee order. 2 black, 1 with cream. I was already pouring when he set the clipboard on the counter to free up his hands. He was talking while I poured, something about the concrete delivery, a rescheduled inspection, the particular logistical frustration of a project this size. I was listening the way I listen when my hands are busy, present enough to respond, free enough to keep moving. Whole permit process took longer than it should have, he said, flipping a page on the clipboard. The original approvals were handled by some firm out of Scottsdale. Rue and Callaway Development. You know how it goes. One outfit hands off to another, and nobody has the same paperwork. I set down my tongs. The grill kept going. I could hear it, the low, steady sound of the heating element, the faint spit of fat on the grate. Everything around me continued at its regular pace. I did not move. For seconds. Maybe 5. Garrett looked up from the clipboard. His eyes registered something, a pause in the normal rhythm of me, a hesitation that didn't belong in the sequence. He didn't know what it meant. He had no context for it. He just noticed it the way you notice a hiccup in a sound you've been hearing long enough to stop consciously hearing. "You all right?" he said. "Fine," I said. "Sorry." Thought I smelled something burning. I picked up the tongs. I finished his order, passed the coffees through the window, took his money, made change, said have a good afternoon, Garrett, and watched him cross back toward the crew trailer with the clipboard under his arm. I did not look at the name again. I did not need to. Callaway. Not a common name. Not a name you file away and retrieve weeks later uncertain whether you remembered it right. The kind of name that is cut into you, the way initials are cut into wood, and the tree grows around the scar, and 20 years later the scar is still exactly the same size it was the day it was made. The grill ran until 2:30. I served 3 more orders on a body that was completing the correct movements while the rest of me was somewhere very still and very cold, standing in a room I had not been in for 6 years, hearing a door close. At 2:30, I killed the heat. I did not drive immediately. I sat on the floor of the truck with my back against the wheel well, the way Nora sits when she is drawing on a hard surface and needs something solid behind her. The metal was warm through my shirt. The site outside had gone to its afternoon rhythm, the heavy, methodical sounds of work, someone's radio carrying across the lot, a loader moving gravel on the far side. Normal sounds. A normal afternoon. The name sat in the center of my chest the way a stone sits at the bottom of still water, not moving, not doing anything. Just there. Just its own specific weight, which I had been carrying for so long that I had stopped being aware of it most days, the way you stop being aware of a scar until someone touches it. Rue and Callaway Development. Scottsdale. He had done business here. His company had handled the original permits for this site, the site I had been parked outside for 3 weeks. the site that Travis Eldritch owned.
I did not know what that meant.
I did not know if it meant anything. Contractors work jobs. Handoffs happen. One name appears on a permit, and another takes over, and the first one disappears into the ordinary noise of commerce. That was the rational accounting of it. My rational accounting had stopped at the moment I set down the tongs. I sat on the floor, and I breathed, and I did the thing I had learned to do when the weight got specific and sudden. I did not move through it because moving through it had never worked. I let it be exactly as heavy as it was. I sat with the full weight of the name and the full weight of what it attached to, the specific, detailed, 6-year-old memory of a night I had spent a long time learning to carry without being crushed by it.
Callaway.
Here, the same patch of Phoenix desert. Outside, the loader moved another pile of gravel. The radio played something I couldn't name. The afternoon light through the ventilation gap above the grill was the particular orange gold of a Phoenix late day, the kind of light that makes everything look warmer than it is. I had come to this site because the money was reliable and the location was consistent. I had told myself it was a practical decision. I sat on the floor of my truck and understood, for the first time, that I had not known what I was driving toward. I still did not know. The not knowing felt different now than it had this morning. This morning it had been the ordinary uncertainty of a life in forward motion. Now it sat in my chest beside the name, and both of them were very quiet, and neither was going anywhere. I had spent 3 days preparing for something I could not name. Not preparing the way you prepare for a conversation you have decided to have, preparing the way you brace before weather. Keeping myself a little farther back from things. Answering Nora's questions a half-second slower than usual, my attention somewhere behind my eyes rather than fully present. She noticed. She is 6, not oblivious. She asked me Tuesday night if I had a headache, and I said yes, because it was easier than the truth, which was that I was waiting for a door to open that I'd kept locked for 6 years, and I could feel it moving in its frame. I did not tell Travis about Callaway. I had gone back and forth on this, not in long deliberate debates with myself, but in the small involuntary way you go back and forth on things you are not ready to decide. A thought surfaces while you are making coffee. You press it down. It surfaces again while you are driving. You turn up the radio. That kind of back and forth. The kind that tells you the decision is already made, and you are simply waiting for your body to agree with it. I told myself I was not going to say anything because it was my history and not his concern. I told myself that right up until the afternoon he came to the window and did not order. 2:15. The site had thinned to skeleton crew, the heavy equipment gone quiet. I was wiping down the counter when the shadow fell across the serving window, and I knew before I looked up, the same way you know before a phone rings that it is going to be bad news. Not from any signal, from the specific quality of the air. He stood at the window with his hands at his sides. He did not reach for his wallet. I know about Callaway, he said. 4 words. The same weight as the name itself, landing in the same place, except this time they came from outside me, and I could not press them back down. I looked at him. I did not speak. I did not move. I stood at the counter with the damp cloth still in my hand, and I waited, because that is what you do when something you have been holding alone for 6 years steps into the open. You wait to understand the size of it before you respond. He did not fill the silence. That was the thing about him I had catalogued early and kept returning to. He did not fill silences. Most people cannot tolerate the space between words. They rush to cover it, to explain, to soften whatever has just landed. Travis waited the way the desert waits, without apology, without urgency, without any indication that the silence was a problem to be solved. He waited, and I stood there, and the grill ticked behind me as it cooled. A long time passed. What did you do? I said. His contracts with Eldritch Development are terminated. A pause, not for effect, for precision, as though he was choosing each word for its specific accuracy. His licensing is under formal review. 3 other women have filed statements. The case is no longer with the original investigator. 3 other women. I heard that and had to set the cloth down on the counter because my grip had gone wrong, not shaking, just wrong, like the signal between my hand and my brain had rerouted through somewhere unfamiliar. 3 other women, who had also carried it, who had also found their own version of a rule, A lock checked twice, a 10-minute limit on feeling the weight of a night they had not chosen. How did you find out?
I said.
I was looking at the permit history. Garrett mentioned the firm. I recognized the name, not from permits.
He stopped.
Started again. I know the kind of man Calloway is because I have been in the business of knowing what the people around me are. It is not a kindness. It is how I have survived a long time. Another pause. When I knew what I was looking for, it did not take long to find. He had gone looking. Not because I asked. Not because I told him. He had stood in the dark, whatever dark a man like Travis Eldritch inhabits, and gone looking on behalf of something he had no name for yet, and come back carrying something I had stopped believing anyone would ever carry for me. I gripped the edge of the counter. My hands were shaking. I pressed my palms flat against the stainless steel and held them there, and the cold of the metal moved up through my wrists, and I focused on that, the specific, grounding cold of the counter, because it was the only thing in the immediate world that was not moving. I didn't ask you to do that, I said.
No, he said.
You didn't. He looked at me steadily.
No apology in it.
No self-congratulation either. Just the fact of what he had done. Offered without packaging. I wanted to be angry. I reached for it, that reliable, structured anger that had been one of the better tools in my kit for 6 years, the anger that kept the sentimentality at bay and the decisions clean. I reached for it, and it was not there. Not gone. Just unavailable. Like a door that is locked from the other side. The 3 women, I said. They're okay? They will be. I nodded.
Once.
The way he had nodded when I said 6 years, the nod of someone whose suspicion has been confirmed. We had swapped that gesture now, and neither of us commented on it. He stayed at the window a moment longer. There was something in his face I did not have a category for, not pity, which I would have felt as a blow. Not satisfaction. Something older than both. Something that understood that what he had just put down on my counter could not be taken back, and was not asking me to do anything with it right now, and was willing to wait the same way he waited for everything. I'll see you tomorrow, he said.
He left.
I watched the black SUV move down the access road and turn onto Camelback and disappear into the late afternoon traffic. Then I crouched down behind the counter. The grill was still warm behind me, not hot, just warm, that particular residual heat that lingers after the work is done, like the appliance itself is reluctant to let the day end. The smell of it was the smell of every working day for 6 years. Familiar as my own hands. I put my back against the cabinet below the grill, and I pulled my knees up and I pressed my face against them, and I let it come. Not quietly. Not with any of the dignity I had spent 6 years maintaining around this specific wound. My shoulders came up and my hands went over my face, and the sound I made was the sound of something that had been held underwater for a very long time finally breaking the surface. 6 years. 3 other women. He had gone into the dark and come back with a name already handled, and I had not had to ask, and I had not had to explain, and I had not had to be strong about it for a single moment while it happened. The grill cooled behind me. I cried until there was nothing left of it. Then I sat in the quiet for a long time, the truck around me, the Phoenix afternoon pressing warm against the metal walls, my own breathing the only sound, and underneath the exhaustion of it, underneath the 6 years of stored weight finally released, something else.
Small. New.
The particular lightness of a woman who has just been told she is not alone in something she thought she would carry forever by herself. 3 months is not a long time to build a life. It is, however, long enough to stop pretending you are not building one. The restaurant had been Travis's offer and my specifications, which was the only way I had agreed to it. Every measurement. Every piece of equipment. The 6-burner range I had wanted since the first year of the truck, when I understood that my limitation was not the food but the surface area. The prep counter at the exact height that meant I could work for 8 hours without my lower back filing a formal complaint. The back office with the small daybed, ostensibly for storage overflow, actually for a 6-year-old who fell asleep doing homework 3 nights a week. I had submitted everything in writing. Travis had read it without comment and made it happen without revision. That had been its own kind of conversation. I had opened 6 weeks ago. The Camelback location, a narrow storefront on a block that already had foot traffic, good parking, the kind of steady neighborhood rhythm that sustains a lunch business. My name above the door in clean sans serif letters, the same green as the cactus on the old truck. PHX Gourmet Dogs, table service. 40 covers. A short menu built around the truck's bestsellers, expanded into things I had been making in motels on a 2-burner for years, waiting for a kitchen large enough to do them properly. The first 2 weeks, I had not slept more than 5 hours a night. Not from worry, from the particular keyed-up state of a person who has been aiming at something for a long time and has finally arrived and does not quite know what to do with their hands when the work is done. I kept finding small adjustments to make. Moving the condiment station 6 inches. Relabeling the prep containers. Reorganizing the walk-in by frequency of use. Nora told me I was being a lot, which is her current highest grade critique, and she was not wrong. Travis had come in twice in the first week. Once for lunch, once at closing time to walk the kitchen with me while I explained the prep flow. He had listened the way he always listened, with the particular quality of attention that made you feel like what you were saying was being filed somewhere it would not be lost. He had not offered opinions. He had asked 2 questions, both practical, both good. He had left when the walkthrough was done. I had told myself, driving home, that this was what the arrangement was. Practical. Cordoned. I had not quite believed it even as I thought it. The opening night was a Thursday. Full house from 7 until close. Ortega came with his wife and his 2 kids, which made me have to look at the range for a long time before I could turn back to the dining room. Garrett Pell brought most of the crew. There were people I did not know, word of mouth, a mention in a local food newsletter, the organic accumulation of a neighborhood noticing a new thing. I worked the pass all night. That was the only place I wanted to be, behind the counter, watching plates go out, tracking the timing, making the corrections in real time. My kitchen. My rhythm. My name on the door, and my hands on every plate. At 9:15, during the brief lull between last seating and dessert service, I went to check on Nora. The office was at the back, a small room that smelled like fresh paint and the cardboard from the last of the supply boxes I hadn't broken down yet. The daybed was against the far wall, a lamp on the small table beside it. Nora asleep with a total commitment. She had always had to sleep. One arm thrown over the edge, her drawing book open on the floor where she had dropped it. Travis was in the chair by the door. Not doing anything. Not on his phone. Not reviewing anything. Sitting in the straight-back chair with his hands on his knees, watching her sleep the way you watch something you want to make sure is safe. His jacket was off. His shirt had a crease in it from the chair back. He looked not smaller, exactly. More like a man who had let a room see him at rest, which was a different thing entirely. He looked up when I came in. Neither of us spoke. The office was very quiet. The muffled noise of the dining room came through the wall, voices, a chair scraping, someone laughing at something. But in here the air was still and close and warm from the lamp. I stood in the doorway. I had a full dining room waiting. Dessert tickets were coming. There were 17 things I needed to do in the next 10 minutes, and every one of them was legitimate and real. I stood in the doorway, and I did not move toward any of them. This was the cost. This was the thing I had been circling for 3 months without looking at directly, the specific price of wanting something that was not on any list I had made for the shape of my life. Not survival. Not stability. Not a room for Nora that didn't share a wall with the highway. This. A man sitting in a chair watching my daughter sleep because he had decided she was worth watching over. The wanting of it was clean and complete, and it did not ask my permission. I said, "Stay." Just that. One word, the same weight as 6 years, the same weight as the name on the door, the same weight as every rule I had made, and every lock I had checked twice and every 10-minute limit I had imposed on feeling things I had not chosen to feel. He looked at me. "Are you sure?" he said. I was already walking toward him. There are women in this city who know what it costs to finally say that word, who built everything alone and still find themselves standing in a doorway, terrified, asking for one more thing. If you felt that, if something in this story reminded you that you are allowed to want, then you already belong here.
Subscribe.
These stories don't end. They just keep finding the women who need them. Later, much later, after the dining room had emptied and the kitchen was clean and Nora had been moved to the car still fully asleep, boneless with it, her face slack and perfect, I stood at the front window of my restaurant with Travis beside me, his hand holding mine, and I looked at the Phoenix skyline doing what it always does at that hour, holding its lights against the dark like it has something to prove. The mountains behind it blacker than the sky, the whole enormous, indifferent city, going about its business with no awareness of the woman standing in a restaurant with her name above the door and her daughter asleep in the back seat and her hand in the hand of a man who had gone into the dark for her before she ever asked him to, and I understood, standing there with the window glass cool against my forehead and the smell of my own kitchen still on my hands, that every piece of this, the loan, the truck, the moves across Phoenix, the rules, the locks checked twice, the 10-minute limits, the weight carried without complaint, the name above the door. And this, every piece of it was mine, authored entirely by me, chosen and built, and arrived at through nothing but my own refusal to stop, and that the man beside me was not the end of that story, but simply the first thing in 6 years I had chosen to add to it entirely for myself. Somewhere in this city, there are other women like me. Women who built in the dark, who carried things they were never asked to carry, who one day found themselves standing at the edge of something real and had to decide whether they were allowed to step into it. I don't know their names, but I recognize the way they move, careful and precise, and always watching the door. I used to watch it too. Tonight, for the first time, I let it close behind me.